Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on a couple of files, the first of which will be the 13th Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue. Now, President Assisis was in Germany yesterday. Today, he went to Serbia, to Belgrade. We're going to be looking at that, also looking at Foreign Minister Shukri, who was presiding over the 13th Pittsburgh Climate Conference. And also we're going to be looking at the human capacity building. Now, this is in light of Egypt's Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. The government is exerting a lot of effort to focus on the denominator of all the sustainable development and working and building a new Republic of Egypt, working on the human capital, the human capacity in the country. Before we start doing that, let's check out some of the stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah Assisis, who arrived in Belgrade, Serbia, from Germany today on a first official visit to the Balkan country, where he met with the Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić. Presidential spokesman Bassam Radi said the two leaders would review means to foster relations in various domains, in addition to a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern. During his visit, the president is scheduled to meet with the Serbian parliament speaker. On Thursday, the head of state will give a speech at Belgrade University on overall historic relations between Egypt and Serbia and principles guiding the Egyptian policy towards main current regional and international issues. And joining us now over the phone to shed more light on the President's visit to Serbia, we're joined by Dr. Sharif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Dr. Amir, first off, we've seen President Assisis visiting Germany yesterday, and today he left from Germany to Serbia, to the capital, Belgrade. What is the importance and the significance of having such a visit right after Germany?
Well, I think that President Assisis is giving now a message to the international community that Egypt is not isolated from what's going on in the world, especially with the ongoing military operation, the Russian military operation in Ukraine. I think we have to explain to our partners in Europe, first in Germany, that this conflict has to end. And I think that we didn't join the sanctions against Russia, and we won't do it. So I think that President Assisis explained Egypt's interest, national interest in acting so, and I think that things now are very clear that it was unwise to take any hostile steps against Russia, and now we are showing the world once again that we had this vision about being very careful in dealing with Moscow in these affairs. Now that the president is in Belgrade, and we all know that Belgrade is that Serbia is a strong ally to Russia, and I think that this is also another message that we are telling the world that we are not taking sides, but we're still open to all kinds of alliances and camps which will help us to ensure our security. We all know that lately President Assisis attended as Egypt's candidacy is being presented to the BRICS. We are a candidate for the BRICS now. So I think that it's obvious that Egypt's foreign diplomacy, is reshaping its alliances again according to the new changes in the world.
Well, President Assisis was visiting Germany, part of the 13th Pittsburgh Climate Conference, also now visiting Serbia. Now, you've mentioned that Serbia is a strong ally of Russia. Germany is a strong ally of Ukraine. Do these two visits show Egypt's equal stance regarding Russia and Ukraine? What sort of message does it send from the Egyptian diplomacy to both countries and the rest of the international community?
Well, it's an excellent question. And I think that in these circumstances, it's very hard to be neutral in this conflict. It's very hard. I think that the Germans now are very well aware, and maybe President Sisi chose this timing, that the Germans now know they were the first being hurt in the sanctions, and they are trying now to rethink their way of dealing with Russia. And they regret a lot because they have lost a lot for the gas supplies. They are losing many industries inside their country because of this problem. Their economy is being now squeezed. They're paying, Germany is the country is paying the highest price in all these sanctions. So I think that President Sisi maybe is the right person, and I'm sure he's the right person to give the Germans a bit of outside look, outside analysis, outside of the EU, that we have to reshape the relationship with Russia again. President Vladimir Putin used to urge his partners in Europe for dialogue and to explain to the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian regime, that they have to abandon the fact that they will join NATO. So I think that no one wanted to listen. So President Sisi now could be the person who would make it clear to our partners in Europe that there is a bloc in the Middle East. This bloc and Middle East and Africa would not join the West in their attacks, economic attacks against Russia. And in the same time, we do not wish to see a country like Ukraine being destroyed. So I think the Europeans need to hear a new opinion, a new voice. And Egypt's voice is very important. And that's why he was very clear that the next stop was in Serbia. That means that he's telling the West, we are your friends, but we will not be the enemies of Russia by any means.
Mm-hmm. Well, the president is set to meet with the Serbian parliament speaker. He will also later on deliver a speech in the University of Belgrade regarding the Egyptian-Serbian relations. What sort of topics do you expect the president would have or discuss with the Serbian parliament speaker?
Of course, that we will have to exchange with our friends in Serbia the visits of the parliamentary committees. We have to organize many deals in the many fields. We all know that the world is changing now. Egypt wants to see new partners in Egypt here. So why not our Serbian friends would come here and invest here? And I think that all goes not only by the government, it goes also by the parliament in these countries, because once you sit with the committees in the parliament and you explain all these important negotiations with a country like Egypt, these committees vote for all the laws of exportation and importation, and it could be very helpful for us. Another thing which is, of course, very important is the military industry. We have a close cooperation with our friends in Serbia in this field, and I think that this would be very helpful for us to open new doors of exchange with the Serbs about the military expertise, especially that we share many diplomatic and regional interests.
Dr. Sharif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And moving on, ladies and gentlemen, concluding the Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue in Berlin. Now, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held a joint press conference with his German counterpart, Annalena Baerbock, today. Shoukry called on rich and developing countries to show readiness to compromise at the upcoming talks, saying that the negotiations shouldn't be a zero-sum game between wealthier and poorer nations. The top diplomat said that every useful discussions brought Egyptian officials closer to understanding the areas of convergence and also possible divergence, which will require more work from us all at the November summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Concluding the Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue in Berlin, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held a joint press conference with his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock on Tuesday. Shoukry called on rich and developing countries to show readiness to compromise at the upcoming talks, saying that the negotiations shouldn't be a zero-sum game between wealthier and poorer nations. The top diplomat said that every useful discussions brought Egyptian officials closer to understanding the areas of convergence and also possible divergence, which will require more work from us all at the November summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. For her part, Baerbock said her country will continue coordination with Egypt and contributing to the success of the upcoming climate conference to be held in Sharm el-Sheikh next November. The minister said it is important to go forward with the main goal of meeting the global warming limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius agreed to in the 2015 Paris Climate Accords. On the sidelines of the Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue in Berlin, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, the appointed president of the 27th round of the UN Climate Pact, held talks with the US Presidential Climate Envoy John Kerry. They exchanged viewpoints over issues of mutual concern, atop of which alleviating the negative effects of climate change and its repercussions and providing climate finances. Shoukry said the Egyptian presidency of the 27th round is exerting efforts to bring viewpoints closer and is renewing its set national contributions to lower emissions and launching a 2050 national strategy for climate change. He said the efforts contribute to encouraging all parties to continue with efforts to achieve climate goals. Before heading to Serbia, President Abdel Fattah Assisis held a number of meetings with his German counterpart, the Minister of Defense and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, in Berlin. The President, along with the German Chancellor, presided over a high-level session of the Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue. In statements to Egyptian television, presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said the timing of the visit to Germany is of importance at both bilateral and international levels.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're joined over the phone by Dr. Khalid Fahmy, the former Minister of Environment. Dr. Fahmy, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear clearly. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Your Excellency, now we've seen the President attending with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz a high-level session yesterday, the 13th Pittsburgh Climate Dialogue, and we've seen Foreign Minister Shukri meeting with his and holding a joint press conference with his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock, discussing this very important dialogue, this very important conference, which is kind of just considered some sort of a dress rehearsal for the COP27 to be held in November in Sharm el-Sheikh. How important and how integral is this dialogue as a sort of preparation for the COP27?
The Pittsburgh Climate Talk, as you have rightly mentioned, it's a dialogue which Germany invites countries to, selected countries to, and it is one of the most important milestones toward any COP. So it's usually done in the summer, June or July, especially in this year with the circumstances and the distortions that we have, whether it is the Ukrainian war or whether the food crisis or whether the energy crisis or whether the COVID and the continuation of COVID. And in addition to that, the stagflation that's umbrelling most of the world at the moment. Under these circumstances, it becomes one of the events where countries test their ideas and prepare for the negotiation in the COP. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, of course, is the G7 and the G20, and link again the Jeddah summit and the parts of the declaration that was made by the leadership there, especially these are the Gulf state and their impact on the oil and on the energy sector is major. So if you link these all together, then you would be, and you can picture what exactly or what are the main topics where we have agreement or disagreement. And this is exactly what Minister Shukri said, that the climate talks will help us in discovering areas of agreement or other areas for disagreement. Mm-hmm.
Your Excellency, now, during the press conference, Foreign Minister Shukri actually mentioned that the negotiations shouldn't be a zero-sum game between the wealthier and poorer nations. Now, you've pointed out to the COVID-19 pandemic, the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is affecting the energy and food resources, constituting crises globally. Is there a fear that it would be a zero-sum game between the wealthier and poorer nations, using these sort of crises as a reason?
Let me tell you that from my experience, I mean, COP27 really, the success of it, on the degree of success or even failure, is measured by the ability to reach consensus on disputed issues. And we have witnessed before in other conferences, which we didn't have, or what they were convened under other circumstances, under other environments, that the negotiation was hard. I expect myself, that the negotiations will be much harder in COP27. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a lot of work that has to be done, and there is a lot of understanding that has to be reached, and there is a lot of sacrifices that has to be done so that we can approach, and I'm not saying reach, approach the aim of 1.5 Celsius increase in the temperature of the world. So yes, there is a real threat that it can come to a zero. Mm-hmm. So,
Your Excellency, now, Foreign Minister Shukri mentioned that the COP27 and all these meetings and dialogues should still aim to have the limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius of increase. Now, do you feel that it is a feasible target to achieve? I mean, it's been agreed on in 2015, but with the whole world turning to renewable energy and cutting on carbon emissions, and we're seeing it really very much happening here in Egypt. Do you see this as a feasible target to be achieved, or do we still have a lot of work to do?
I think the problem is, in particular, with the world turning into renewable energy and green economy. It's not that the target is visible or not, with all my respect, but it is the time that we need to reach this target. That's where we have a problem. Because you can see now that because of the Ukrainian war, Germany is even accused by a lot of countries that is retreating in its energy and going back to coal. So, and we're talking about Germany. We're not talking about any other country. If you can see the declaration by Prince Mohammed Sabreen at the Jeddah summit, where he's saying we must be rational in implementing and how quick we implement transition into energy policies, that if it's not done in the right way, could lead to a major energy crisis in the world. So, I mean, it's not that we will shift to the renewable energy or to the green hydrogen. It's the time that we need for that. Because for the 1.5, it's not the 1.5. It's when we want to reach this. We want to cut emissions by 50% by 2030. This is 7 years. We have 7 years to do that. And we have to make another cut by 2050, also 50%, so that we can reach carbon neutrality. Mm-hmm. Now, this is what's disputed between the countries. Germany was planning to reach this in 2045, most of the EU 2050, US 2050, China 2060, India 2070. Okay. In our indices in Egypt, there is no mention when we will reach this. Okay. So it is a matter, it's not a matter of we believe that this is the target. The problem is, can we reach the target? Do we have the know-how? And do we have the resources to do that? And this is where, because all of what we have reached in Glasgow, if we sum all the pledges that were made, and if these pledges come really in implementation, because most of these pledges are made without even these countries that made the pledges have the economic policies and the right policy to implement it. Mm-hmm. So even if we do that, even if we fully comply with the Glasgow achievements, mm-hmm. we will only reach 60% of the reductions we need. So there is a need to increase ambitions. There is a need to turn these pledges into implementation and add on it in a very troubled world, economically, politically, and where most of the world would be divided. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, whether we will be able to reach a consensus, mm-hmm. and the right consensus. We will reach consensus on certain issues, but I don't know if the dose of consensus that we can achieve will be enough. Because all the pledges, as I said, if they are implemented, you will be able to reach, even with the assumption that you will have the economic policies in place and being truly implemented, you will reach by 1.8 or 1.9.
Yes, well, hopefully
we would reach.
Yes, well, hopefully we would reach a good, favorable consensus in spite of all the challenges that lay ahead. Dr. Khalid Fahmy, the former Minister of Environment, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, now turning our attention to the second topic of tonight's show, building the human capital here in Egypt. Now the local development ministry is working on human building under President Assisis directives. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
of Local Development, Mahmoud Sha'rawi, said his ministry is working on enforcing the directives of President Abdel Fattah Assisis on human building and raising awareness among villagers. The ministry remarks came during the signing ceremony of a cooperation protocol inked between the ministry and the Misr Al Khair Foundation and Agyal Youth Development Foundation to carry out Values and Life project on raising awareness among citizens about human and society values in some governorates. The ministry will cooperate with both foundations to implement the project in a number of governorates topped by Upper Egypt ones, targeting all villages covered by the Presidential Decent Life Initiative. Minister Sha'rawi lauded great efforts exerted by both foundations and all NGOs to contribute to helping the state improve living standards for all citizens in different governorates. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli said the government seeks to improve the services provided to citizens in order to enhance Egyptian quality of life in various sectors as per directives of President Abdel Fattah Assisis in this respect. Madbouli affirmed that the meeting was held to review the indicators of the development in the volume of government investment directed to implement service and development projects in a number of vital sectors during the upcoming fiscal year 2022-2023. For her part, Minister of Planning and Economic Development Helal Said reviewed the volume of government investments to be allocated during the fiscal year 2022-2023 to implement a host of projects in the spheres of health, education, housing and agriculture. Minister Al Said asserted that the government in its development plans is focusing on highlighting the role of education in building good societies and supporting their economic capabilities. It is targeted during the next fiscal year 2022-2023 to build more educational establishments, including Japanese schools and other schools which provide competitive educational services, added the minister. Prominent among the Health Ministry's initiative under the fiscal year 2022-2023 are the establishment of a central laboratory building in Badr City, along with the African countries, noted the minister. The minister, meanwhile, said that there is an increase in the total sum dedicated to housing ministry's investments, noting projects of drinking water and sanitation. Said further said that the government's investment plan for the fiscal year 2022-2023 covers green projects. She pointed out to the mega projects carried out by Egypt in the irrigation, housing and local development sectors. About 160,420 citizens received several medical treatment services through the National Diabetes and Endocrinology Institute. However, Egypt is implementing a green recovery plan to overcome the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic. In the short term, more social protection policies and programs can be proposed in ensuring while providing high-quality health and educational services and paying special attention to vulnerable groups by using information technology and digital transformation effectively.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Mr. Mohammed Sabreen, the renowned writer and journalist. Mr. Sabreen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Sabreen, now talking about the human capacity building now, the human element is part and parcel, the denominator within all the developmental projects. I mean, if we're talking about health, education, industry, energy, what have you, the human element is always right there in the middle, the cornerstone of it. Now, how would you rate the government's efforts, Egypt's efforts in actually trying and working on building and restructuring the human capacity building within the new republic?
You know, I think your report was touching a very important thing, which is, you know, how you are upgrading, you know, the standard of living and the condition of living for people who are living outside, you know, the capital, the Great Cairo. And it is very important, you know, to know that this initiative will try to upgrade and change, the life of 58% of Egyptians who are living, what some people tend or used to say, the other Egypt, the forgetting one. So it is very important. It is a very important message, from the capital in the new republic that, we are considering and taking them very seriously, and we are, the political leaders of Egypt is actually taking, a great effort to improve, the standard of living of the majority of Egyptians who are living beyond, the capital.
Yes. Well, the Ministry of Local Development, headed by Mahmoud Sha'rawi, it witnessed the signing ceremony along with Masr al-Khair Foundation and Agyal Youth Development Foundation to carry out the Values and Life project on raising the awareness and raising the standard of living. And as you've mentioned, they really started off by targeting Upper Egypt and the villages that are being targeted by the Decent Life Initiative. Now, how big of a process is this, considering that the Decent Life Initiative is a gigantic initiative that is targeting about 58 or 60% of the Egyptian population, as you've mentioned, trying to really lay the groundwork and upgrade the infrastructure and the living standards of these villages and the countryside, and also working on the human capacity building. How hard is it to try and work on both levels simultaneously?
I think, you are totally right to describe it as a very huge initiative, and we must welcoming, such initiative, and wishing, the government to succeed. Not only the government, but the rest of private sector, and also, the civil society, and everyone must give a hand to the government and support, by all means. Of course, it is very important, to do the utmost in different fields at the same time. Simply because we are living in the 21st century. The ordinary Egyptians, do have a lot of ambition. It is very important, to raise the standard of living of people, just to stop the internal immigration from, outside Cairo to coming to the big capitals and also to the big cities. And of course, when you are raising the standard, the education, the health, and the entertainment, everything, the road, the bridges, everything, you are actually narrowing the gap between, big cities and capital, and, the small cities and villages. And on the other hand, we have to remember that, one of the main sources to, to the budget of Egypt are, the money of the Egyptians who are living or working abroad.
Yes.
So you need to invest in the human capital. You need to invest in the health of Egyptians, because everything is connected. You need to invest in, the awareness of, the Egyptians, and try to manage and handle in a good way this transformation, moving from an old republic to a new one.
Yes. Well, Mr. Sabreen, talking about the awareness, last Saturday Egypt launched the first national human rights strategy, and President Assisis mentioned and talked about the importance of the civil rights, the civil society's role within building the human capacity and also ensuring that the human rights are met for all Egyptian citizens. Now, this is the first national human rights strategy of its kind in Egypt. How important do you feel, and how big of a step do you feel this is for all the Egyptians, and a real consideration, a real show of importance and highlighting the importance of human rights as a given right for every Egyptian citizen?
I think, this big step sends three messages. The first message, which is, the commitment from, the highest political level, to the local audience and also to the international audience, that Egypt is committed by, the culture and, procedures of human rights. So this is a very important message to, to the Egyptian local and to all Egyptian institutions, that, the leadership is committed. The second message is, it is not only a commitment, but it is actually a very concrete procedures, which is already implementing, through Parliament and through other things. And we are noticing a lot of measures, which is, everyone is watching, and it is a positive and welcoming steps. The third one, which is a very important thing, which is, the launching of this strategy and implementing it, actually must be joined by a huge campaign of awareness, to spread, this, culture and this, knowledge about, the human rights, and educate, all people in schools, in, university, and also in different institutions. And to my knowledge, I think, the government do have a plan, and I think very soon they are going to start, very concrete steps by spreading this awareness about the culture of the human rights.
Yes. Well, Mr. Sabreen mentioned that building the human capacity requires a lot of finances, and the public investments that were directed to human development rose to 51%. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Minister of Planning and Economic Development Helal Said said the percentage of government investment directed to human development is 51%. Minister Al Said referred to the education sector, where about £52 billion were directed in 9 years to education, with a growth rate of 817% in 2021-2022 compared to 2010-2011. The minister explained that in the field of pre-university education, the plan aims to continue the efforts made to reduce the density of classes and expand access to education for all without discrimination by directing 15 billion Egyptian pound to provide 25,000 classes and 1.2 billion Egyptian pound to apply compensation to technical education and applied schools and 875 million to improve the competitiveness of the outputs of the pre-university education, as well as the establishment of 10 Japanese schools and 20 schools of applied technology and others. She noted that in the field of university education, the plan includes credits of 7.4 billion Egyptian pound to establish and equip 15 private universities with the capacity of 150,000 students and 1 billion Egyptian pound for mechanization and 154 test centers in all public universities and 442 million Egyptian pound in technology universities. Regarding the health sector, Al Said pointed to the implementation of a number of development initiatives and projects aimed at developing and improving the health services, which includes the establishment and development of 94 hospitals and 448 health units, with the funds of 5.26 billion Egyptian pound. They also included the establishment and development of 148 hospitals with the fund of 3.67 billion pounds and the establishment and development of 36 hospitals with the fund of 1.8 billion. And the establishment and development of 15 hospitals and 104 health units with the framework of development of urban agglomeration within the Decent Life initiative, with the fund of 2.2 billion pounds and provision of 1,500 intensive care beds, with funds of 1.3 billion and 493 million pounds to enhance the Egyptian role in the healthcare African countries, including Djibouti, South Sudan, and Uganda. In addition to 350 million for the supply of ambulances for the Decent Life initiative with 1,000 new cars, 350 million pounds for the central laboratory building in Badr, 250 million for the development of 52 integration hospitals, and 400 million for the automation of 78 universities' hospitals. However, this came in addition to the establishment of 17 waste incubators, the provision of 131 waste cars, and funds of 209 million within the framework of the medical waste treatment projects. The minister explained that the performance indicators comparing to 2002 to 2014 indicate a 30% increase in the number of university hospitals, 24% increase in the number of beds, 31% increase in the number of nurseries, and 61% increase in the number of the intensive care beds.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Mrs. Sabreen. Now, as we've seen in the report, it seems that most of the money and the investments are going into the educational sector, the health sector, also some cultural aspects of it, working on and establishing the museums, really trying to elevate the cultural and civilized sense for the citizens. Now, do you feel that this is the core, these are the cornerstones of building a very well-balanced human capacity, investing in the education and the health?
You know, first of all, I think, you know, the IMF and also a lot of, you know, economic and developer researcher and professors are speaking about the importance about raising the standard and the investment in education and also in health. At the same time, you know, if we are connecting, you know, the event, the recent one, it is now we are discovering, you know, that health issue is very important.
Yes.
And investing in this, important sector is no longer a luxury or something you could say, we will do it a little bit later. It is a must, to raise, the health of the whole society, to raise the health of your citizen. It is very important. At the same time, the education, our time is getting more and more sophisticated,
yes.
And technology is actually is moving very fast. So you need to upgrade, the education of your own people to be ready. The new republic is sending the message, or one of the cornerstone of the new republic, that we are belonging to the rest of the world. We are ready to compete and to be a very good and clever player,
yes.
In the international arena. It is a matter of fact, that Egyptian, intelligentsia and Egyptian blue, white collar workers are actually moving all around the world, and the demand is very important. So
yes.
we need to be up to the level, and it is a must.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, Egypt is investing in the educational, the academic, the technical education, the cultural aspect, the health sector as well as the human rights and the role being played by the civil societies. A lot of work is being done to build the human capacity of the Egyptian citizens. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Mr. Mohammed Sabreen, the renowned writer and journalist. Mr. Sabreen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.